Terminator 0. All episodes released August 29th, 2024. Released on Netflix. Creator Mattson Tomlin. Welcome back to Real Reviews. Like always, I am your host, Lee. Today we are talking about Terminator 0, the new anime released on Netflix. I'm at least moderately familiar with Terminator. I have seen most, if not all, of the movies, but I have never seen the Sarah Connor Chronicles. Terminator, like Alien, has some very specific things that make it feel like it is in the Terminator franchise. Does this show hit those points? Is it good? Let's talk about it. The animation in this is pretty great. I don't think that will surprise anyone. If Netflix is becoming well known for certain things, one is releasing anime that looks good. Even in the context of this being a fairly bloody show, they don't overdo it. Blood happens, and they move on. One thing I said in the opening is that Terminator has some tropes that are kind of required for it to feel like a Terminator project. Those are time travel, a resistance, and obviously a Terminator. It has all of those. It honestly cleared that checklist pretty quickly within the first episode, but it does a good job adding to those as well. So I didn't list the starring cast this time because the show has two primary casts, the Japanese one and the English one. I watched it in English. The English cast does a pretty good job. I was never really taken out of the show due to how any of them sounded. Occasionally, the director for English dubs has the actors overact in less than great ways. I imagine that has something to do with how the Japanese is acted and wanting things to match up. This doesn't really seem to have that issue at all. Honestly, it is great, and with some high-profile actors like Rosario Dawson and Timothy Olyphant. Let's get to some questions. There will likely be spoilers here.
Considering Terminator 0 as a prequel within the larger Terminator series, what could be its impact on the overall narrative arc of the franchise?
I think calling this a prequel isn't the right way to go with this series. It starts a few hours before the launch of Skynet. Also, with how time travel supposedly works in the Terminator universe, this series won't cause any issues with continuity. The only real change I see is that the first person to use time travel, the person who built it in the future, went back years before the launch of Skynet in hopes that he could defend the world against it. Honestly, it is kind of cool.
What are the main conflict drivers in Terminator 0? How do these conflicts push the narrative forward and develop the characters?
So there are a few threads that we see in this show. One is the father trying to get his AI ready to defend the world and having to prove that humans are worth saving. The next is the daughter and the freedom fighter from the future. They're the ones that primarily deal with the Terminator that was sent back. Lastly, we have the two brothers and the caregiver who we find out is a robot of some sort. This is probably one of the more interesting stories, though I loathe one of the brothers because his story, which never really gets resolved, is that he kind of aggressively disrespects machines. When he finds out that his caregiver is a machine, he turns into an absolute dick. I don't think he really gets the closure by the end that he really needed. These three threads all come together into a generally satisfying resolution as the different worldviews have to work together.
What is the primary setting of Terminator 0, and how does this environment influence the film's narrative and tone?
The primary setting is 1997 Japan. Honestly, aside from the extra robots already existing, it doesn't feel much different when compared to 1997 America. I think there are two reasons for the choice of location. One being it is an anime, and two, they wanted it very separated geographically from where all of the events of the movies happen. The story of this show is honestly pretty good. What if someone knew the exact day and outcome of Skynet launching and intended on stopping it? How would they go about it? What would get in their way to make it more difficult? Would their idea work, or is the future unstoppable? These are all pretty interesting questions to have answered, and they explain why it works with making sure we understand how their time travel works, which is that going back in time creates a separate timeline, so nothing you can do will stop the future of the timeline you just left. They also do bring up the kind of moral question of what is the point if I can't save those I love? They really only say that the answer to that is the difference between humans and machines. Overall, the story is highly enjoyable and felt interesting in the larger scale of the Terminator lore. The pacing in this works pretty well, in my opinion. This is likely helped by the fact that two of our three main stories are always moving forward, trying to reunite with the third. The third story being used to give the audience a break from the action and the chases and to let those stories advance a bit without us seeing them. Many showrunners and directors seem to struggle when they start getting to 3 or more stories at the same time and they feel unbalanced or one moves ahead too far to feel reasonable. None of that is the case here. So on my scale, this one gets an 8 out of 8 or a 10 out of 10 stars. Unlike other things, this one really is that. It isn't getting the points because it technically hit everything. It got them because it hit them and was very enjoyable. I would highly recommend this show if you like anime and or you like Terminator. I honestly think that as long as you don't hate either of those things, you would still find this pretty entertaining. Like always, if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, make sure to like and subscribe for more content like this. I try to have at least 2 videos out per week. Real reviews like this one, or AI reviews, depending on the release schedule. Until next time.